Welcome to the only place where real, raw, and vulnerable conversations happen with IFBB Bikini Pros to give you an inside look at their struggles, strategies, mindset, passions, and all of life beyond the stage. This podcast is made to inspire, motivate, and remind competitors and the average gym goer that even the most extreme lifestyles and elite athletes have their ups and downs. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I'm your host, Celeste Rains-Turk, and now it's time for the Confessions of a Bikini Pro podcast. All right, in this episode of Coaches Series, we are hearing from the women behind Glam Girl Bikini Team. These two are the co-hosts of Prep Life Podcast, which I have been so personally honored to be on myself. So I'm excited to feature these two women today. Amy Anchor is the founder and CEO of Glam Girl and a top 3 NPC national bikini competitor, NPC promoter and judge, and coach to IFBB bikini and fitness professionals, along with hundreds of nationally qualified athletes for the last decade. She has a bachelor's of science in health and physical education with a minor in physiological sciences, master's of science in educational leadership, precision nutrition certification in exercise nutrition, and ACE certified personal trainer, and of course, wife and mother to 2 children. She is joining us with Glam Girl Bikini coach Chris Nicole, who is an IFBB pro, NPTI nutrition, corrective exercise, exercise nutrition, and personal training certified coach, working alongside Amy and the Glam Girl Bikini team. Welcome to the show, you guys. How are you doing?
We're doing great. Thank you so much for having us.
Of course. I was like, oh my goodness, these women are accomplished.
Oh, well, thank you. I just wanted to say to start off this podcast, we were inspired to start our podcast because of yours. And
Wow.
I wanted you to know that your podcast was the one that I directed Chris to before she earned her pro card. She was feeling like she didn't have like-minded people around her. So I told her to listen to your podcast, listen to the pros talk. You need to surround your mind with, what these women have done. And she went on to win her pro card. So thank you, Celeste.
Oh my God. Yes, of course. Like, dang, now I wish I was on video so you guys could see my cheeks. Like, they're flushed. You can hear it, I'm sure, but that means so much to me. Seriously, thank you. I appreciate that.
Well, we just really appreciate what you put out there. I think it's so valuable. It's so inspiring. And so, yeah, it's just an honor to be a part of this.
Oh, thank you. And Chris, congrats, of course, on going pro. Like I said, we got to get you on for
you.
like a individual episode as well.
Yeah, that would be so exciting. I've been listening to your interviews with the pros, and I just love that everybody has a different perspective and a different outlook. Like, it just helps me, I think, when I hear different variety from different pros as far as like anything, that there's individuality in being a competitor as well too. I think we focus so much on those minute details, but the variations of personalities is really cool to hear on your podcast. So yeah, that would be exciting.
Thank you. Yes, I would be honored to have you. And honestly, like, that is part of what inspired like Coaches Series 2 or Coaches Week. I haven't decided yet. I'm just recording right now, but basically whatever this you want to call this. But it inspired that because I want to highlight not only are there different approaches for athletes and different personalities among athletes, but there's also so many different personalities with coaches or approaches to coaching. And there's so many options out there, So as you guys know, I'm going to be asking you like the set of standard questions. I'm going to ask all the coaches. We'll get into a hypothetical round, really give people a look at what it is that your approach might look like in, their circumstance, and then a round of rapid fire questions. So I like to just start off by asking, like, how would you guys summarize your coaching philosophy? And maybe Amy, you could start us off since you founded this team.
Yeah. So when I was first starting competing, I felt like it was a very not known sport. I just felt like a total weirdo back in Indiana 10 years ago. And I wanted to share what bodybuilding did for me and my family. my husband and I, completely changed our lives for the better with our health. We both lost like 50 pounds, and I turned around my cholesterol, and I just, I, it teaches you so many amazing lessons in bodybuilding that are just applicable to life, like the discipline. And it's a rare type of person that you meet in bodybuilding. And I just wanted to create a community of like-minded people. And our unicorn culture is just, it's something that when I started the company, I wanted to create and cultivate a culture of like-minded women that, knowing that if they join Glam Girl, they're going to get very personalized service, and it's a unicorn prep truly for that person. So everybody is so unique. Everyone has different needs. Everyone has a different, hobbies, lifestyle, family, all those different things. We need to figure every piece of the puzzle and find the exact appropriate prep for that person. So that's kind of why I started Glam Girl. Chris, do you want to go and kind of give
Sure.
reasoning? Okay.
Yeah, no, definitely the philosophy behind Glam Girl has always been a unique approach to each individual. And that was what appealed to me the most when I started working with Amy and got me interested in coaching, is because I've always felt like the oddball, and I've always appreciated when people are uniquely themselves and they try to be the best version of themselves. And I felt like the sport and working with Amy really encompassed both of those things. So, I wanted to adopt that in a coaching arena where I could pay it forward as well too. And like Amy had this great company, so I jumped on board. But yeah, it's all about, I think, uniqueness for the individual, but also being well-rounded, like Amy said, like looking at the mental aspect of things, not just the physical, and really servicing the person as a whole. Yeah, and that's what I love the most about coaching.
And meshing it all with science, because we're also bikini nerds at heart.
Yes.
That's true.
I love that. Like taking into consideration the sport as a whole, the division, the criteria, but more importantly, each individual athlete. And Chris, that was really special that you shared what inspired you to join the team, as it really highlighted what Amy was sharing about her philosophy and reason for joining. So I think that's just a really cool confirmation of how Glam Girl does follow through on what their philosophy is. And it got me thinking, like, as you guys were talking about this unique approach, or this unicorn approach, like treating every individual as the individual they are. You specialize in female health, and you use fit 3D scans in person, and you work with doctors, and you have this holistic approach that you're describing. So can you give us like a little inside look or behind the scenes look at what working with you as a client is like that client experience and portal?
Sure. Yeah. So I'll start. So as I said, I'm a bikini nerd, so I really nerd out with data, and I've always tracked, and collected like measurements and all these things. And so I got this Fit 3D scanner so that we can get 3D images of our athletes to look at balance, symmetry, body composition, all of that, so that they're able to see their progress, especially for a person that's, maybe just trying to muscle. That way they can see, if the scale is not really changing, be encouraged by that. So that's one thing that we offer. That goes with their 30 minutes they get every week. So if people are local here in Kansas, they can come in for a scan. They'll do their posing as well during that time. But I think that's one thing that sets us apart is we are all in coaches. So we include, they get 30 minutes. The athlete gets to choose if they want to just talk to their coach through, macro coaching, or have like an educational talk, or just talk about life, or they want to utilize that 30 minutes for posing. We find that communication is so important. We always send videos so that at least our clients can see our faces when we give them feedback on their check-ins, and then they can hear their coach's voice every week. You know, if they're local, they can see them face to face every week. I think that just makes a big difference in adherence. And I've just noticed that by having that practice and making sure that that's a strong thing that we maintain, it's really allowed us to expand our rapport to our clients in general. And we always outsource, just like if somebody's struggling post show, how we outsource and utilize you, Celeste. Um, you know, we always work within our scope of practice. So when we talk about working with doctors, if somebody's hit a plateau and they're just doing all the right things, but they're just not getting, you know, the weight loss that they want, or they're feeling tired all the time, then we appropriately will you know, refer them out so that they can get a blood work panel, get that interpreted, and then we actually work with functional medicine doctors, so they will have us on the phone. So if there's anything that the athlete needs from a perspective that's within our scope, like um, working on stress management, or changing like their diet, you know, anything that's within our scope, then we can kind of work with them synergistically. So we're using science, we're using data, we're using everything, utilizing that to make a better user experience in general. Chris, did you want to talk about the portal at all? Because I know Celeste had mentioned that as well.
Yeah, the portal is like a great platform, I think, where you can have everything focused in one spot. So it allows us to track progress. The clients are able to send in their check-ins every week, like their photos. We do like a full inventory each week where we prompt certain questions, like anything from your digestion to your hormones, or even like mentally, like how are you feeling mentally? Because we really believe that all of those things work synergistically together. So the portal allows us to like not only track like numbers and data, but it also allows us to like keep a good record of like weekly check-ins, photos, and then a lot of our plans and correspondence is through the portal as well too. So, you know, it allows clients to message us or ask questions specifically about their programming, and then we can upload their nutrition, we can upload their cardio, their training regimen, you know, all of those things. So it gives us a really good resource to be able to reach out to our clients and provide organized information, because prep can be a lot. So it just keeps everything like, you know, flowing smoothly, I think, for coach and client.
Absolutely. I love that it's like you guys are saying, it's really all in one and all encompassing of the whole journey. And I think something that stood out to me that you had mentioned was it really seems to be considered of many variables. And you guys communicate with your clients, you outsource when necessary, and you do your best to collaborate so that you can. And I always say to my clients, like, if your mental state is, you know, not addressed, it's going to have an impact on the protocols your coach is giving you.
Yes.
So from your guys' perspective, this is like awesome that you take that into account, because of course, you know that if someone, you know, just went through a stressful event, or they're not thinking positively about their food they're eating, that's going to impact their digestion. And
Yeah.
that is obviously really important. I'm curious if you guys have had any like circumstances or situations where you're like, oh, you know, they're doing everything right, it was just this mental or emotional circumstance that got in the way.
Yeah, I find that I have a lot of high stress, high anxiety um, people that they will get like a cortisol dump, and like their weight will jump up. And then we do a cortisol reset, and it's amazing. They start dropping weight, their body starts responding, their inches are tighter, their pictures look better. And that may be, you know, we completely pull them off training, back it down. Maybe they need their adrenals addressed, but those kind of things, if we work with them on doing like restorative walks, yoga, working on their mental aspect, you know, that positive mindset, that can really affect the body. I mean, the mind tells the body,
Yeah.
where to go. So, yeah, we're huge on the mental piece of that.
Yeah. That's another thing that we do with our check-ins as well too, is we ask people what their wins for the week are, which I think is really good because I think as a competitor, you can evaluate so much about your prep and your body and how you're feeling, and but like putting that box there where they have to rate something like that's a win, it makes them like stop and think, especially if they're struggling. And we celebrate any win. It doesn't have to be like a drop on the scale. It could be like, I got my gallon of water in today, or I felt really strong in the gym. Like it could be anything. But I definitely do agree. I think that like keeping the person's mental aspect in mind really helps with adherence a lot. And it's not just getting to show day, it's a lot of the journey as well too. I feel like coaching helps every day that you're like working with a client, not just on that for competition day.
Yes, exactly. And like respecting and knowing that, I think aids in longevity as well. And you mentioned, Amy, that sometimes you'll implement what you called a cortisol reset, if I heard that correctly. And this made me wonder, it's actually a question I'm asking every coach, which is how do you determine how far to push an athlete?
Yeah, that's a good question because it depends on the person. I think it kind of goes back to how well you communicate and how well you know your client. And those weekly interactions that we have, I just think are invaluable because we get to know. Chris and I we've been a coach athlete relationship for a long time. Let's put it that way. And
Yes.
in the past, we did the traditional, like, she checked in via email and I would type my responses and we would text message. But once we started doing a phone call every week, I just made it like a reoccurring event. More things came out, about her. I could hear the inflection in her voice, and I started putting more pieces to the puzzle together. And so I think it's just about knowing your client on a different level and knowing when they need something like that. Because,
Yeah.
there's some telltale signs when it comes to, like chronic cortisol dumps. So, yeah, I don't know if that answered your question, but
No, it definitely did. It actually got me curious too, like leading into another question. And I'm going to ask this to Chris because she's had that perspective with you from like a client and a coaching perspective. And then, Amy, I'd love if you could expand on it if you have anything to add. But what do you think makes a coach a good coach or a team a good team?
Oh, this is a great question. So this is so funny because I actually sent a voice message to Amy the other day because I was thinking about like how much I appreciated her. And
Oh,
I was thinking, okay, like what are the things about Amy that I really appreciate that I find invaluable in comparison to like working with anybody else? And I feel like there's two things about being a good coach. One, I think there is a huge uh there's a lot of value in being like being on the science end of things, understanding data and understanding the human body. And I mean, there's like, that's just a deep pool to go into with all of the like moving parts of the human physique. So I think there's a huge edge to that, and that's important. But I think um like we talk about having a positive impact, and I know, Celeste, you talk about this too, about having a positive impact on the industry and on people. And I think when you're a coach, you have that platform to do that, but it requires a special um, it requires characteristics where you know how to communicate with someone, you know how to encourage them, where to have tough love, and how to just invest in that person as a whole. So I think like marrying the science end of things, but also with the interpersonal communication, that I think makes a very impactful coach. And outside of placements or trophy, I think that that is where you make the biggest difference. And so I definitely see that in Amy, and that's what I was like. I was rambling in this message to her the other day. I'm like, I just want to tell you all the reasons I love you.
That's so awesome.
But yeah, but that's what I would say. And then as far as like a good team, I think having those quality coaches, and then I think also having like-minded athletes that you've established that trust with them, so they're able to, you know, work succinctly with you and support each other. So yeah, that's what I would say.
So, what are some things that you might recommend girls look out for before deciding to hire someone, or questions that maybe you would recommend that they do or don't ask you to make sure that it is going to be a good fit?
Well, I would say, so our process, we're really selective about the athletes because we first of all don't take on very many clients because we want to make sure that we're servicing our current clients to the best of our ability. And we don't want to ever get too busy that we're not able to take care of our people. So they fill out an application form and we always get on the phone with them. It's basically an interview. So they're asking us questions, but we're also asking them questions too. Do they have realistic expectations based on their timeline? Do they want to I'm not just going to take someone's money. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to give them from a judge's perspective. And this kind of piggybacks on when you were asking how far to push an athlete. So as a judge, I know what they're wanting. I've sat in that chair. We know that a realistic timeline needs to be reverse engineered. So I can tell you, I'm like a carny with weight and height. Kind of tell you what your weight will be on stage. And people are like, I haven't weighed that since middle school. Like it blows their mind. And then come show day, and Chris has been there too.
Yes.
I weighed exactly what you guessed.
I've been there. Yeah, I've been the client who's like, there's no way. This lady's insane. But she's absolutely right. She's like so good at guessing that. So yeah.
That's that data.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, you just see trends, and that's the advantage of working with only females and specializing in bikini and contest prep only. So there's a lot of coaches out there that, you know, I used to train men's physique and things like that, but like if you're going to get open heart surgery, are you going to ask your general practice doctor to give you open heart surgery? No, you're going to go to the specialist. You're going to go to a cardiologist, and you're going to ask them to perform open heart surgery. So we have data from all these different body types of women over the last 10 years that I've been coaching. And so as being a judge and seeing the trends as they change, we're able to, I lay it out like in that first phone call. I'm just like, you know, in the application, it says, what is your expected show date? Like, what's your height? What's your weight? All of that. Now, keeping in mind, weight isn't the only thing that matters, your shape. So we also have them send us pictures because that's very telling as well in terms of that. But we'll give them a realistic timeline because we're not going to do anything that's outside the prep life. We feel like honoring your body happens all year round. And coming from an athletic, you know, from going through this sport myself, walking the walk, I know that my worst times have been post-show when I felt unsupported. So we're looking at this as the prep life. You are in season, but you are always in season because you have an improvement season. There's different goals throughout, but if we're going to get you ready for a competition, we're not going to have you lose more than a pound a week or a quarter of an inch off your hip or your waist. We're going to be realistic about it. We're going to make it sustainable so everyone can get ready for a competition. It's just how long is it going to take? You know, I've lost 100 pounds and stepped on stage and placed high, but that took a serious amount of time. And so we just have these very realistic conversations with people, and I think they appreciate it. It helps them kind of see where they're going, and then they actually get there because they know from day one, like, this is where I'm going. And, you know, if they need more time, then that's fine. But I guess that's kind of some people, depending on their dieting history, will have to get pushed harder. That's just the reality of it. So if we're lucky enough to get somebody right from the get-go, we're able to really build up their threshold, keep everything really high so that we're able to, like, once we start implementing cardio, and we'll have people dieting on 2,000 plus calories. But then there's people that come to us that, they have like a little bit of a dieting history, so they have to go really low. So
Yes.
I don't know if that answers your question. I feel like I'm
Oh
babbling.
no, I love the rambles because I'm like taking notes. I'm like, oh, I gotta bring this back up because it's all so powerful and it shows your passion as well. So I appreciate you going back and rehashing on that subject specifically. And when you said specializing in bikini has really allowed you to develop a lot of data and then work off of that data and be even more efficient in your coaching. And then you talked about how you're able to well, Chris was saying, you really established this group of like-minded women. And I immediately drew the connection between how when you establish that straight in the first phone call you have with someone, that this is our philosophy, we focus on living the prep life, making sure it's sustainable. It could take more time than someone who's willing to just do whatever it takes to get you on stage in 12 weeks. I think that can help to cultivate that environment of women who are like, okay, we're all on the same page, that we're in this for the long run and we're going to do what's necessary. And a big theme that's come up just on this interview so far is also the goal of more adherence. And so I think that comes with sustainability. But I want to know from your guys' perspective what you think is the difference between a good athlete and then a phenomenal winning champion athlete.
Do you want to take that one, Chris?
So that's a good question too.
Athletes, so appropriate.
I think a lot of people can be good at things, but I think being phenomenal is being the exception to the rule. And a lot of times, to be the exception, you have to do exceptional things. So you know I think a phenomenal athlete, one, has a realistic perspective of where they're going and what they need to do, and they're ready to work hard. So I think that's part of it too. Like, your mind has to be in a good place, your body has to be in a good place, and you have to work with realistic goals. So yeah, I mean, that's tough. There's a lot of like really amazing athletes out there, but phenomenal, I would say it really comes down to their mentality, because that really, I think, that piggybacks off of their execution as well too. So you just have to be exceptional. You have to be okay with not doing what the mainstream people are doing, and not doing what maybe a group of other competitors are doing. You're really willing to push the limits to really set yourself apart.
I think too, I just want to say, as Chris's coach, when I noticed the change in her when she went pro, the difference of the years past before that is she had that prep life mentality, where it just was a year-round thing. It was part of her lifestyle, and she focused on foods that gave her good energy. She did things to, enhance her body year round. So it wasn't just like an on and off, like black and white situation. There was gray, and, there were seasons, and she always had that in her. That was a switch that I think turned you pro, in my opinion.
I love that. And actually, Amy, could you maybe expand on from a judge's perspective as well? Like, what is it when you're in the judge's chair that you are specifically noticing or seeing that you then bring to the table to support your athletes in not just showing up and embodying this lifestyle, but also making the improvements necessary to do well up there?
Yeah, so being a judge, the reason why I do it, like I do it once a year, and I've promoted, so as a team in Indiana, all the promoters were really tight knit, and we all, judge each other's competitions. And I, when the reason why I do it is so that I stay fresh on the looks and the trends that are happening in the industry. That's another reason why I'm at every show. I've traveled so much this year, even though it's been COVID. Probably too much, but there there's something you learn every time as you're sitting there, even if you're in the audience watching or cheering on an athlete. You see how bikini changes every year. And since when I started doing it, I mean, we didn't even have crystals on our bikinis. Like, we had diaper butt bottoms. And so you just see how what the criteria, how it just changes a little bit every year. And you kind of see, like, in the posing, and so I just try to pick up on that stuff, and that's why I stay active in the organization, so that I'm on top of that as well. I just like to be a part of it in every aspect too, which is why I was the first female promoter in Indiana, because I just like to have that opportunity to give athletes to participate in it. And so I just like being involved in the sport. I don't know if that answered your question, but
Yes, actually, I want to hear then your perspective on politics and what you would say to people who say politics with teams plays a role in their clients' placing, or that all of this is political and judge and promoter. And what's your perspective?
yeah, that's interesting because so in Indiana he retired last year. So that's why I didn't judge this year, but and probably because of COVID. But so he had been a district chair for like 30 years, and he's also a zone chairman. And he tests you, go through 3 tests, and he actually has us judge our athletes to be our litmus test. So I was so nervous. My first time judging, I had an athlete in the show. Luckily, I placed her in the exact placement that she was supposed to be in. And so it was a relief. But that I would have been out if I would have done that wrong. So I know not every place does that. I'm going to start helping out Jack Tatone and Ann Tatone next year. And they have you actually sit out of the panel if you have an athlete in the show. So I know every state kind of functions a little bit differently, but knowing that you're basically toast as a judge if you get it wrong, that was kind of
Yes. I remember Robin Maher talked about that too when she came on the show. She was like, I sit out if it's an athlete that I've worked with, or she was saying that they also put you through tests, and like if you don't match like the head judge, then okay, like you're not fit to do this, or here's what we need to look for next time. And I thought, wow, that's it's great to know that from an athlete perspective, people are taking responsibility. And at the end of the day, like, if there's I personally believe if you have a respect for winning, you have a respect for the criteria, you have a respect for the sport, you want to not only put the best foot forward as an athlete, but you also want to be judged against other people bringing their best. And you want to have fair judgment, have fair placement, so that that integrity can be upheld. And this question may be a little bit, I don't know, may not be, I don't know, it's a little bit on the controversial side, but do you guys feel like natural athletes have a chance at success in the NPC if they don't have, the genetics that make this bikini shape?
Well, Chris, our natural pro, why don't you that one?
So yes, I do believe that natural athletes can do very well in the NPC. I mean, we train natural athletes, and we have a lot of girls excelling and doing really well, and myself included, being a natural athlete. So I do think that, having good genetics it definitely plays a role. So I won't ignore that fact. If you have great genetics, or, if you're a mesomorph, I would say you have a little bit maybe easier time. If you're in good health and you keep up with your physique, there are advantages to anything. And so I think there is a role in that, but I don't think it's the end all. I don't think that, like Amy said, we've had clients that have lost over 100 pounds and have placed and done it naturally. So I think that's why we really emphasize the unique prep, because it's going to take something different for everybody. But no, I don't think all hope is lost if you're a natural athlete. I still think you can do really well. You just got to know what's right for you and for your body.
Love that. And do you guys mind opening up about like any pet peeves you have with being a coach in the industry, or just as a, I guess, any pet peeves within the fitness industry, and then any pet peeves as a coach?
My biggest pet peeve is when I don't like it when people throw other people under the bus, because there's more than one way to skin a cat. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
When you're really dogmatic about a philosophy, that's when you should worry, because if you look at what I was producing as a coach in some of the research that was out at that time, that along with experience, I've changed my methods. Like, I'm always learning and I'm always evolving. So I just don't like it when somebody is like hard and fast, like only macros, like make that
Mhm.
pop flag. That might not be good for somebody like myself that, I don't know. Everybody's different. Everybody has a different need. So I think to kind of like be like there's only one right way. That's, I guess, my biggest pet peeve. I don't like it when people do that.
I agree. That bothers me a lot. What about you, Chris?
I would say the biggest thing that probably gets under my skin is when people don't take ownership. So I think this can go for either a coach or an athlete, because nobody is perfect. Like, there have been preps that I've put clients on that I think, man, I probably could have done this differently. Or, like, a lot of coaching is trial and error. And I think athletes don't always realize that when they get started. They think like, okay, we're going to magically know everything about their body. It's going to be one shot and it's going to be perfect. And there's a lot of like ups and downs and trial and error. And sometimes you just have to stick through with a coach, so that you can figure that out. But I do see like coaches getting blamed for it's one of those situations where like you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. If you push somebody too hard, then they're upset and they feel like, they could win, but they may feel like, oh, I had a really tough time reversing. I was pushed too hard. I got too lean. But then if you don't push somebody hard enough, then they can have a really healthy physique, but they can be upset about the placement or, so I think just as an athlete, taking ownership of your own actions, and I say that because I'm in both situations. Like, if I, follow my protocol, I follow my plan. Number one, I communicate with my coach. I'm responsible for all of those things. And then I think as a coach as well, like, it's okay to like make mistakes. And yeah, like some people may not be as forgiving, but I really feel like that's a lot of how people learn it. Like, coaches learn in this industry is experience and learning from other coaches. And so taking ownership when you do well, and then when you don't do well, I think, you play a role in whatever aspect that is. So I hope that makes sense.
Yes, absolutely. And I really appreciate you sharing that, because I'm with both of you. I definitely agree on both sides of this. Like, let's give our coaches enough time to really get to know us and learn us and work with us and make the changes necessary before writing off the approach itself, or getting blindsided, or I guess the shiny object syndrome of, oh, well, macros is the only way to go, or meal plans is the only way to go. So yes, taking ownership and knowing like what Amy was saying, there's many ways to skin a cat, but also, there's a lot of ways to take responsibility for how you do that. And I love that you guys shared that. And as a coach, of course, and this happens in any coaching role or even any job or career, but there are mental, physical, and even emotional tolls that come on as a coach. So how do you guys handle the demands of being a coach, and what kinds of emotional tolls has it taken on you?
Yeah, so early in my coaching career, I learned really fast that I can allow things because I'm so passionate about what I do, um, I would allow it to kind of bleed into when I needed to be more present with my family, and things like that. So I, from the get-go, things that I've done to kind of myself more organized with my time is I set business hours, and then I have designated time for focusing on my family. So my clients know upfront these are my hours to contact me. I always try to get back to somebody within 24 hours if they email me, but we try to get our channels, our communication channels solidified with our clients and communicate that with them on how we want them to communicate. So we have the portal. We want to stay organized. When a client texts me, I try to reserve that only for emergencies because I will just immediately respond to that text. I won't put a lot of thought into it, and they deserve my full brain on it and like my focus time on answering their question appropriately and correctly.
Mhm.
So if they text me a question about their programming, I'll just say, can you please, put this in the portal. I promise to get back with you right away, but I want to make sure that I sit down and take the time to answer this appropriately. And so that's really helped me, kind of like draw the lines of when I need to fill up my cup. And I just have like certain hours for certain things. So that's time management, I think, is the biggest thing, the biggest key to
Mhm.
have longevity as a coach, because you can let it, you could be working 24/7 if you're like me, where you just love doing
Yes,
it, but it's not always, you need some balance too.
totally. Chris, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I would. This is so funny that you asked that because Amy and I talk about this on a regular basis because it's hard. Like, I think when you like invest in people and you care so much about them, the lines can get blurred between like client and coach and friends. Um, and like, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with being connected with someone and close with them. But also when you are, but you do need to protect yourself too, like Amy was saying. And the best thing that she recommended for me when I was struggling with this is like setting business hours. Like, these are the times that I work. And I think this is like a good tip for anybody who has like an online business, or they can create their own hours, still designating your work day. And then yeah, clear lines of like where to communicate, like what avenues to communicate through. And then yeah, and then the only other thing, oh man, it slipped my mind. What was the other thing? I don't remember. Apparently I'm dying for it.
Well, when it comes back to you, if it does, when we're recording, just blurt it out. It's totally fine.
Thank you. Thanks, Celeste. So forgiving.
Of course. I appreciate you guys sharing that. Like, it's real and it's nice to hear from coaches, what they go through, what goes on in their mind, and how they're applying that. And I personally have found too, like, time blocking is really great. Sometimes though, I struggle more to honor that with myself because, like what you said, Amy and Chris, like, you really care about these people. You really want to support them.
Yeah.
You love what you do. And I like that there's a reinforcement of a boundary as well, where it's like, I'm asking you to put this through the portal because you deserve the energy and time I give when I'm in the portal. And like, I think that helps clients understand the importance of those boundaries. And I do the same thing. I'm like, I respond within 24 hours because you deserve the time. If I always was like, I'll respond instantly within 1 minute, they would never get the amount of attention to detail they get with more time. And I think that's, really key in being a good coach. And you guys I think this kind of supports this next question, but if you have anything to add to it, I'd love to hear. But when you're focusing and prioritizing your time and energy with so many different athletes and even multiple top performing professionals or ranking professionals, how are you able to decide like where to put your energy or focus? Or do you notice a difference in, I guess, the type of athletes you find yourself focusing more on?
Yeah, that's an interesting question because I mean, like I said, I give everyone 30 minutes, and I don't personally do lifestyle. We have coaches that specialize in that, but I mean, even those lifestyle clients, they deserve that 30 minutes of time with their coach. Now, keeping in mind that, when people are in peak week and things like that, they get more attention because they have more check-ins and there's more, formulations of adjustments and things that happen. But everybody, like we said before, everybody deserves unicorn prep. And so even if they're in an improvement season, I'm still going to be treating them the same, like I would, somebody that's the top performer.
Love that.
Yeah. You do a good job with that too. Like that has really helped for me as like a client to like have repeatedly still check in my improvement season, get some feedback. We're still strategizing. So that's why I think like having the coach and the client on the same page and I like there are times where like that 30-minute call like totally changes my outlook for the week with just from talking to Amy, because like online sometimes you could feel like you're alone on an island, and we do have a really great group of women that we're connected virtually with, but just hearing somebody's voice and like talking through some things and just like her personal investment in all aspects of my life, I think just it can put wind in your sails again as an athlete. So those like 30-minute time boxes helped me as a coach, but also as an athlete as well too.
Totally. Like we are human at the end of the day, and it's nice to be
Right.
heard and understood. And as you guys know, like my mission is to help people build more than just a body. And I think that that's really satisfied when we examine and look at and tend to, beyond the body, beyond surface level. So
Right.
I would love to move into the hypothetical round with you guys. So there's going to be 5 questions here that are hypothetical based on like what someone might be going through. And then we'll go to rapid fire. So hypothetical number 1, if I'm 1 year into competing with a few overall wins under my belt, so I'm doing well, and my goal is to get my pro card. I've never stepped on the national stage though, and I've been working with the same coach for this whole time I've been competing, but I was actually looking for a new approach. Why would I hire you?
Well, I would want to ask this person a couple of questions as to um, kind of obviously they've had a lot of success. If they've had a couple of overall wins, that's clear that something was working. So I would first want to know why they wanted a different approach, if that is because to me, if somebody wins an overall, that's telling that person they need to go to nationals. So maybe that's what this person's asking, because they were never directed that way. So for me, my personal story is I probably nationally qualified 20 times at regional
Mhm.
and no one ever told me like a path to make this into a fruition of a pro card. And so Chris, yours was so like fast. She did a regional show and then we did 2 national competitions. She got a pro card, but like you need guidance to a path. You need a coach that knows the national circuit and that knows like what your look is, like that you would have the best odds of winning your pro card there. So like I have Masters 50 competitors. I'm going to send them to Masters Nationals because I know that format. they're going to be the most successful because there's the most height splits for their age group. Like we're going to USA's with one of my bikini competitors that she won the overall, and that's a good show for her because the top two win. So you have to hire somebody that is in the appropriate spot. Maybe that person's just they hit like the leadership level of that coach, and maybe they just need the next thing. I've had a lot of competitors come to me that their coach just kind of wanted to specialize in just regional competitions, and they didn't really have an interest in going to national competitions with their competitors and things. So they recommended me. Actually, a couple of our came to me from in that situation, but I think it's just like the knowledge level. Maybe that's what she's asking for. So if there would be more questions, obviously I would do like a 30-minute phone call with her and talk about it.
Love
So
that. Actually, that's really interesting too, just what you said, some coaches do prefer to specialize in one thing or the other. By the way, I'm gonna get to meet you guys at USA's. I'm so excited.
Yay!
you on. That'll be
That will be awesome. So, okay, I'm gonna ask this next one. So if I'm 4 weeks out from a show, but I keep saying I don't feel ready, but you believe that I am, what would your response be to me?
Chris, you want to take this one?
Yeah, I'll take this one. Okay, so first of all, I'd want to know, like, if they don't feel ready, I'd probably prompt more questions, like, why don't you feel ready? What would make you feel ready, to kind of figure out where their brain is at and what their expectations are. And then a lot of times I would ask them, so I feel like the number one thing, honestly, that comes up a lot when people don't feel ready is because they're looking at everybody else.
Yes.
And they're like comparing their physique. And I just have to remind people to, like, let's focus on you and let's stay in your lane. And a lot of times, like when people are, within a 4-week time frame out from a show, I do this myself. I'll just kind of like not scroll on social media because I want to keep my head in a good place. Like Amy said earlier, like your body reacts to what happens in your mind. And so if those things are kind of deterring you or they're making you feel discouraged, then just remove them. And also, like, a lot of what is seen on social media is not always 100% accurate. And also, like, this is so funny because I was talking to a girl this morning about this. Like, you just never know. Like, you could think this girl is like super conditioned and my conditioning is not as tight, or she has huge shoulders and my shoulders are just like not the same roundness. But you don't get judged on one thing. You get judged on like a whole package. So if judges want softer conditioning and that's what you're bringing to stage because that's what bikini's looking like, then you got to go confidently out there and present that. So yeah, most likely I just kind of like ask them a couple questions to find out where their mind is at, and then reiterate and remind them like how hard they've worked, and also that you have people that are strategizing for you. You just have to execute. Let me worry about all the little details. And just enjoy the process.
Yeah, I'd love to piggyback off of that too, because I feel like I don't get this question that much because from day one, I tell them where they're going to be. So they're going to know because they're going to be following that like average 1 pound, or, if I have like an inches goal, like on their waist, the trajectory's already been set and they know the path. I've already laid it out before we even started. So typically that mitigates a lot of those, a lot of that angst, because they know, like, I'm like, this is where you're going to be on this show day. And these are the steps. Like, you just have to worry about that. If they've competed before, I try to have them look at where they were the last time, and kind of show them like a side by side of, okay, you've already won because you've already beaten your package. It doesn't really matter whoever is going to show up that day, but as long as you've bettered yourself, I mean, I know that wouldn't apply for like a first time competitor, but I think that that sometimes can help. Like if they reflect back on like where they've come from too, that can be really helpful.
Yes, I absolutely agree. I feel like it can put things in perspective, take those prep goggles off or those hypercritical ones, and even like what Chris was saying, like not going on social media and looking at what everybody else is bringing. And I'm sure there's been, well, I know I've seen judges post about it, but I'm sure there's judges who are like, that girl looked nothing like her photos leading up to the show on stage. And it's like, yeah, because we're
Yep.
peaking, there's a whole timeline, the coach has a protocol, there's expectations, it's just different.
Mhm.
It's not like the athletes control, like, I mean, obviously you're taking a selfie is very different than stepping on stage and being seen through every movement of that. So I like
Yes.
that you guys touched on the whole package, focusing on yourself and remembering the goals and the expectations that were set forward from the beginning. Now, let's say someone comes to you wanting to compete or considering it. What's something you want them to know before they compete?
Well, one thing it's been really nice with the podcast. We we started our podcast, with the mission that even if it just helps that one person, we had no expectation for it other than we just wanted to help people. And it's been nice to be able to give information every week so that they've kind of already interviewed us before
Mhm.
it comes on, or they come on board, or they even apply. So they kind of know that. So, Chris, do you have anything that you say on the phone in particular? I feel like they already kind of know me and at this point, just because we put
Yeah.
out all the time, so they know what we're all about, kind of thing.
Yeah, I think letting them know, like you said earlier, is like their weight or like what type of expectations. Like I try and give them like a rough estimate of what, like off the top of my head, what my plan would be for them, and kind of like see if they would be on the same page. So if I'm like, the weight is the biggest thing. Like if I was to estimate based off of your height and muscle maturity, this is where like a weight range where you would be very competitive on stage. That I think is a lot of times like a make it or break it for people, because either that's like not what they were expecting at all and they think like they're just gonna lose, like 5 pounds and then be like competitive, lean, and looking fit and good like year round are two different things. And I'm not sure that everybody understands that. So having that conversation in the beginning of like, you're pretty small. I think that helps people know like off the bat too. And then also I always ask people like, what are one or two things that are super important for you to get from a coach? Like what is it that you want out from your coach to guide you? And then I make sure that we can provide that. So if people are like, I want to have access to my coach 24/7, I'm very realistic with them and tell them like, this is how we have set it up to communicate between coach and client. Like we're not accessible 24/7. But I just want to make sure that, it's like dating. You want to make sure that you guys are a good match. And I also want people to get what they expect when they put out the money for their prep. I want them to have like a it makes both people happy when you're on the same page.
We always want to under promise, over deliver. Like that's a big key to it. And I think another thing too that I like to let them know is that we have a group me chat, and I don't think a lot of teams do this, but we are from all over the place, and even different countries, every state pretty much, and we communicate on a regular basis in this group me chat. And I don't feel like every team has that. So I always make sure that they know that they're going to be connected to other like-minded individuals right away. And then I don't think a lot of teams do like a team show where we just make them feel like queen for a day, finally meet these people that they've been chatting with for so long, and they feel like they already know each other. We set up photo shoots. We bring our own hair and makeup people. Their coaches are there for them every step of the way. And it's just a really fun way. this year we did a new thing. Before COVID hit, we did a team retreat, and we all met in Phoenix, Arizona, and like climbed Camelback Mountain. We kind of did like a fit outing, but we just kind of do extra things so that people feel connected, so they don't feel like they're alone in this journey, because bodybuilding can be pretty lonely.
It's a small community already.
Yeah.
I love that. I think that that's really cool. And actually, when you guys choose team shows, how do you make them run smoothly and really create that camaraderie while you're there? Like, is everyone just automatically included in that photo shoot? Do you guys like choose team shows based on where everyone's gonna do their best? Because obviously some people on different levels. So I'm just curious how you go about doing that.
Yeah, so we choose a spring, a summer, and a fall show. And I just started doing this a couple years ago just because I realized that, you know, if we can all just have like a date solidified that your coach is going to be there, it's incredible. Like we had probably 15 different states represented between coaches and athletes at our fall team show. And we have it very organized. Like we have pretty much a format that we follow. We usually use Ben from the New Me journey. And I book it ahead of time, and we do like a fitness shoot, and we do pictures in their suits, because I feel like you don't on show day, like you're stage lean for like a short, small time. And sometimes if it's your first show, like the day goes by and you're just like, oh my gosh, I don't have like one good picture, you know? So we'll like have we'll check in together on Friday night. We'll do team posing and practice. And then, like I said, I provide a hair and makeup person because I'm very big on being hands-on. We even fit them in suits, like rent suits out for them. So we're just really hands-on. We want to make sure that their makeup's right, that their hair's right. If you travel somewhere, sometimes you just get a random potluck and hair and makeup in bikini is extremely important. And there's like a certain look that I want, and I don't want to have that variable of stress for them. So I set their appointments, and yeah, we're there. And then after prejudging, we do like our photo shoot, and ladies always have fun with it. It's always a good time. And yeah, and then we always have a celebration dinner, and we plan that like on our event. Everything like through GroupMe. We kind of have an event calendar that they can RSVP, and like their friends and family can come too. But it's a nice time to just like break bread and celebrate after the show too. So
that's awesome.
They're closed, right? So
Yeah.
we somewhere that's like open late that will have good food.
Yes, that is so funny. Usually it is like I hear competitors backstage like, all I wanted was to go to this restaurant and they're closed already. It's like, oh, you should have been thinking about other things. But aside from that, I think it's awesome that you guys are so hands-on and like genuinely just like it's almost like you're taking that stress off of their plate, making that experience really memorable. And another hypothetical question I have is if your client comes to you and they say they've completely rebounded after their show, and I know you guys take this approach of wanting to prepare them, but let's say this is someone who like goes to do, they fell off, they rebounded, they just want to reverse it, or maybe it's a new client and they want to get back to normal. What do you do from a nutrition and a training perspective?
Do you want me to answer this one, Amy?
Yeah, you can go. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So I think the first thing that I do with somebody who's like struggling with this is, one, I let them know that they're not alone, because I think there is so much that happens where people feel like they just messed up, they're beating themselves up, they feel really guilty. So it's very humbling for them to come back to a coach first of all and say like, hey, here's like what happened and I need some help. Like that's a big step. So I just want to like make them feel safe, that they know that I'm not here to like do any judgment. And I also share personal like situations as well too, to just be relatable, because I think when people know that they, at least in my situation too as a client, you know, like when Amy has shared her situations with me or where she can connect with me on a personal level, it makes me feel closer to her and more open to share, but also helps give me hope, because I'm like, okay, like she struggled, but
she's like doing really well. So I think you like set the precedence that way when you open that conversation. And then the next step I do is, you know, like we solidify a goal of where they want to go. And I really need to look at like how far out from a show they are. So like how many weeks is it post show? And then from there, I kind of like decipher where their body is at. So if they're, you know, like 6 to 8 weeks out, I know it's like a very sensitive time for their body. So we're going to be a little bit, you know, we're going to find a happy medium with their food and figure out how we can get them to adhere to something healthy. And just like focus mostly on cultivating good food relationships. I think that's the best start. And then I look at their adherence from there and adjust accordingly. So I know that's kind of like ambiguous, but I think it's just dependent on the person and how far out they are, how much weight they've put on. But that's a tough one when people are uncomfortable in their own skin and you just want to help them, but you can't diet them too soon if they're too close to post show. So I think just helping them feel good about their actions and empowering them to make healthy choices sometimes can just help them get on the right track. And then we can go from there.
Yeah, and to piggyback off of that, we really try to get them up to maintenance calories right away. That's a practice that we feel like is really important in getting their calories so they're not prolonging the dieting phase even more after a show, because that's where we find that the restrictive eating and the binges occur. And it still might happen, but then as a coach, we adjust and we know our clients, you know, they're open and honest with us. It's happened to all of us, right? So if that's the case, we'll put them in a recovery diet where they're at surplus calories right away, because I would rather them have high baseline calories rather than, you know, trying to restrict and then having like a binge where they have 3,000, 4,000 calories. I would rather them be satiated and have a high calorie until they can get into a point where they feel like they're a little bit more in control. So it takes about, like Chris said, 6 to 8 weeks for, you know, we have our body fat cells release leptin, which is the satiety hormone. And then our ghrelin, our hunger hormone, is super high after a show. So they're just not going to feel like themselves, and they're going to feel so hungry. But it's just their body's cues are off a little bit. So we adjust and we listen to them on what they need. You know, and we always try to put the goal beforehand. We always try to give them the reverse and talk to them before, because I want my competitors to be armed and ready to know exactly what they, you know, and for me as a coach to know what they're going to, because for everybody it's different. Some people aren't comfortable going really, really high calorie after a show. But we want to meet them in the middle so that we're protecting them from, you know, getting into these cycles. And then if we can't help them, then we outsource them to people like you.
Me, I'm just kidding. I absolutely believe I'm the best in the business when it comes to like the mindset side of things and the food relationship side of things, but I also appreciate when coaches like actually are responsible too. And that's why I love to ask this question, because I think you can tell a lot from, you know, a coach's perspective post show and how they address that proactively. And I love and totally stand behind what you said. It's actually something I sometimes have to encourage their girls to talk to their coach about, which is, you're binging in an uncomfortable and uncontrollable way. You're not even enjoying this food that you've been restricting, and that's setting you over, let's say 10,000 calories. That's putting you in far more of a surplus than if you just raise the calories. Let's see if it is coming from a caloric deficit, if it's a caloric restriction you're feeling or a food restriction you're feeling. See how that works. And I think sometimes that physical responsibility, that tangible effort can go a long way, while also working on like maybe other deeper motivators or reasons for this. So I appreciate that you guys shared that and that you take that approach. And I love that so many of your answers to these hypothetical questions was digging deeper, really. And I think that's important. And so My last one for hypotheticals is if someone's physique is on point and they've been nailing everything in their plan, but their posing is lacking and they haven't been practicing, do you put them on stage?
Chris?
Their posing is lacking because they're not practicing.
Yeah, they are not practicing. You've helped them, but they're not practicing.
This has happened. And they're, well, I think if they feel, okay, so this is another thing too. Sometimes clients don't put as much value in their coach's instruction until they hear it from a judge. So this has happened as well too, where, you know, you can instruct a client one way, but they're really digging their heels in. So if I'm telling her, you know, like, we really need to work on your posing, we need to present well, like, you've worked so hard on your physique, let's make sure that those 10 seconds that you're up there, we're presenting these days and days and weeks and weeks and weeks of how much you have like kicked your butt in the gym or like adhered to your plan. And if they're still not listening to me, but they're really confident and they want to get up on stage, I don't think that I should be in the way of them getting up on stage. Their package is ready. If, you know, like, as a coach, you've done what, you know, you feel is appropriate to getting the client to that elite level and up on stage. Sometimes they just need to have that experience, or they need to see other girls, and then it might click for them, like, okay, like, yeah, maybe I do need to like work on my posing. Or a coach says, you know, your package is phenomenal, but you need to work on posing to progress. That's where I think sometimes like a third party needs to, that may be the case where the third party needs to come in. So
And speaking
like,
of, I sometimes jump on, we'll do like a 3-way call. So we
Yeah.
practice less at 10 weeks out. We recommend that pretty much that's what you should, at the very minimum, you should use us 10 weeks out for your 30-minute time. But a lot of times I'll hop on and with my other coaches that I mentor and with Chris and her clients, and sometimes just hearing it from a different person, like,
yeah,
coaches have different keywords, and sometimes it just clicks in a different way, like if they use, you know, like a different term or something like that. So hopefully we catch it before. But I've also known people to do extremely well and they still weren't, maybe they could have placed higher, but at the end of the day it is a physique competition. So whether or not your posing is on or off, depending on the day, but I think, you know, it's one of those polished things that doesn't make or break whether or not we're going to put a client on stage, if that makes sense.
yeah.
Yeah, that's so funny. I literally interviewed another coach, Nicole Ferrier, and she's the one who hosts Beyond the Bikini, and she said the same thing as you, Chris, like, let them learn their lesson, basically, like, if they're not listening. But obviously you guys have done everything you could to support them. So let's go into rapid fire round. So with one sentence or less, you'll answer these questions, and then we'll pick like maybe one or two to expand on if you want to. So number one, waist trainers.
Yes.
If it fits your macros or meal plans.
Both.
Both. Yeah.
Fasted cardio.
On that one. Context dependent.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%.
Like, or the person's lifestyle.
Yes.
Water cutting.
Sometimes.
Yeah. Context dependent again.
Yes.
Yeah, most of these will be. Steady state or HIIT for fat loss.
For fat loss, okay, I don't know if I can put this in one sentence.
You could expand on this one.
So for HIIT, we utilize that for like our ectomorphs or our hard gainers or anybody that we don't want to lose mass. We use HIIT cardio. And then people that need to bring down their legs, that don't need their legs to get any bigger, we do lifts.
Awesome. Okay. And then best supplements for competitors.
That, I don't think there's any one that's like the one. Like I said, like, I think Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you agree with this, Amy, but I think it's different for everybody.
I would say basics that people should probably utilize are fish oil because of its cardiovascular benefits, multivitamin, probiotic, um, BCAAs or an EAA, and then if they want protein powder, those would be, I don't know,
Awesome.
basics.
All right, last one. Have you ever fired a client?
Chris, have you?
I have never fired a client. No, I have not.
I've had clients where it's just we both come to the agreement that it's just not the right fit. I always, like I said before, I want to give them the best experience that they need. So just like in the example that I gave where maybe it's like a national coach, it's more of like a regional coach. Maybe there's a reason that it's not a great fit for both of us. And, I'll just explain. I think that you would be better serviced seeking out somebody that specializes in XYZ, whatever they're looking for. So I've definitely done that. Or if there's like, if they get to a certain point where I wouldn't be providing them the best. Here's a good example. And I didn't fire her. So I guess this isn't really rapid fire either, is it? So for example, Karina, my fitness pro, she was a bikini competitor, then went into figure, and then I really wanted her to do fitness because of her gymnastics background. So I outsourced. I recommended that she goes to Whitney Jones for her choreography to earn her pro card because that was going to give her what she needed. That was outside my expertise level. I'm not a fitness choreographer. So I don't know if that's.
No, that makes sense. Definitely not in a negative connotation, more in a loving, I want the best for you type of way on all fronts, which is awesome. Okay, so that really concludes it. I mean, we covered so many different things, and I appreciate you guys being so open and covering all these topics with me. And I would love if you could share how people could connect with you too or find you.
Yeah. So you can find the team at Glam Girl Bikini on Instagram, or you can go to our website, glamgirlbikini.com, and you can actually fill out the application. At the top, there's a Get Started button there. And then my personal Instagram handle is Amy Enger, and I'm sure no one knows how to spell that, so I'll give that to you, Celeste. So
Oh, yeah. I'll get it all in those show notes.
EHINGER.
Yeah. And I'm on Instagram as Chris Nicole IFBB Pro. So.
Perfect. Okay, well, I promise I'll get all that stuff in the show notes page, which you guys know is always on celestial.fit/podcast. So when you guys go, there's going to be a full show notes with episode timestamps. So you'll be able to see when we covered what maybe a little insight into what their answers were. So you can always go back and find that portion of the episode. So you can go back and get those golden nuggets and, of course, connect with them too. So the links will be there as well. And if you're listening to this well into the future, make sure you check the category section for their names and for the coaches series. And if you're listening to this the first day, it should be at the very top of the page. And Amy, Chris, thank you guys so much for coming on and for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Celeste.
Of course. I'm glad you had fun. And to everybody listening, make sure you tag everybody. Give us your main takeaways. Let us know what you learned or if you have any follow-up questions. And I hope that you all have an amazing rest of your day, night, or morning, wherever you're in the world while you're listening to this episode. Just make it up.